Imagine being humiliated in front of your entire workplace by someone who thinks they hold all the power. Now picture that same person's face when they realize the very person they tried to belittle now has the authority to decide their future. This is the story of Elijah, a man whose quiet strength turned humiliation into triumph and reshaped an entire company. Power, wealth, or a high rank may give you a sense of superiority for a moment, but remember, the day always comes when you're held accountable for your actions. Racism, belittling communities, or disrespecting others based on religion may seem unnoticed now, but justice has a way of finding its mark. Respect is not just about others. It defines who you truly are. Think about it. What will your legacy be? Here in the United States, the law is equal for everyone, no matter your community, race, or religion. Diversity is what makes America strong, and unity is our greatest power. We stand together, respecting one another and sharing a deep love for our country. Patriotism is not just about flags or borders. It's about embracing every individual who calls this land home. In the USA, injustice has no place. Together we uphold justice, equality, and the shared dream of freedom. We love the USA, and the USA loves all of us. Comments below where you're watching from, and if you like and love our story, kindly subscribe our channel. Life, inspirational, and motivational tales that explore themes of love, unity, and patriotism. Stay with us always for interesting stories. Thanks. Let's start the story. Elijah sat at the far corner of the break room, his lunch meticulously packed in a simple container. His movements were deliberate, his demeanor calm, as he quietly enjoyed the brief reprieve from the demands of the workday. The room buzzed with chatter as groups of colleagues laughed and scrolled through their phones, filling the space with bursts of light-hearted conversation. Elijah had always preferred sitting alone during these breaks. It gave him a chance to breathe, to reset, and to momentarily escape the politics of office life. He had been with the company long enough to know where he stood. Reliable, diligent, but always underappreciated. He had learned to navigate the unspoken rules of the workplace with quiet resilience, though a part of him could never shake the feeling that no matter how much he proved himself, some people would never truly see him. The door swung open with a sharp creak, and the room shifted. A heavy silence rippled through the space as Mr. Hartman entered. His presence was impossible to ignore, not because it was magnetic, but because it carried the weight of power wielded with arrogance. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, Hartman scanned the room like a monarch surveying his subjects. The casual conversations faded into murmurs, then silence. Everyone knew that Hartman's gaze could land on anyone, and when it did, it never ended well. This time it landed squarely on Elijah. "Elijah!" Hartman called out, his voice cutting through the quiet like a whip. It wasn't a greeting, it was an accusation. Elijah looked up, meeting Hartman's eyes. "Yes, Monsieur Hartman," he replied evenly, though his pulse quickened. "What exactly are you wearing?" Hartman gestured toward Elijah's shirt, a simple button-down paired with slacks. It was clean and tidy, but lacked the sharpness Hartman expected. The break room seemed to shrink under the weight of Hartman's disdain. "It's just a shirt," Elijah answered, his voice steady. I didn't have any meetings today. Hartman scoffed loudly. Didn't have any meetings, he echoed, his tone dripping with mockery. Is that your excuse for looking like you just rolled out of bed? This isn't a charity, Elijah. Standards are slipping around here, and I think we both know who's to blame. Uneasy laughter rippled through the room. A few of Hartman's loyalists chuckled, though their eyes flicked nervously toward Elijah. Others looked away, unwilling to challenge Hartman's behavior. Elijah clenched his hands under the table, his knuckles whitening. He refused to let Hartman see the sting of humiliation that churned in his chest. Hartman stepped closer, looming over Elijah. You're lucky we don't have higher standards for promotions. If we did, you might not have made it this far. The words landed heavily, like a slap across the face. Elijah kept his expression neutral, though his heart pounded. He had heard worse before. I knew better than to give Hartman the satisfaction of a visible reaction. Satisfied with his display of power, Hartman smirked and turned to the rest of the room. Let this be a reminder to everyone, standards matter. Don't get too comfortable. The door swung shut behind him, and the tension in the room eased slightly. Conversations resumed, though they were subdued. Elijah sat back in his chair, his jaw tight and his gaze fixed on the table. The humiliation burned, not just because of Hartman's words, but because of the silence from his colleagues. No one had spoken up. No one had stood with him. Slowly, Elijah gathered his things. As he rose to leave, he caught the eyes of a young woman from marketing who gave him a small apologetic nod. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind him he wasn't entirely alone. Back at his desk, Elijah replayed the break room scene in his mind, dissecting every word and gesture. Hartman's behavior wasn't new, but today it felt heavier. It wasn't just about his shirt or his promotion, it was about power. Hartman's need to belittle others wasn't strength, it was insecurity, masked by volume and bravado. Elijah leaned back in his chair, his thoughts drifting to the past. He remembered his mother, Evelyn, who had worked tirelessly as a housekeeper to provide for him. Her hands were rough from scrubbing floors, but her spirit was unyielding. It doesn't matter where you start, son, she used to say. It matters where you end up. And Elijah knew what her mother meant, and he worked harder than ever to achieve. Evelyn's sacrifices had taught Elijah resilience. He worked night shifts to fund his education, shouldering the weight of others' expectations while chasing a future he refused to let slip away. Even as a child, he had faced low expectations. Teachers doubted his abilities, peers dismissed him. Yet every slight became fuel for his determination. He carried that fire into his career, where he climbed the ladder step by step, never letting obstacles derail him. But no matter how much he achieved, there were always people like Hartman, people who saw only what they wanted to see. The following week, Elijah received a call that would change everything. The voice on the other end introduced themselves as a representative from a rival company. Elijah, we've been following your work for a while. Your professionalism and leadership stand out. We'd like to offer you a senior leadership position, and as part of our acquisition of your current company, we believe you're uniquely positioned to help lead the transition. Elijah was stunned. The offer was more than he had ever imagined. Yet, as tempting as it was to leave Hartman and the toxic environment behind, he hesitated. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about making a difference. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," the representative replied. "We believe you'll see the value in what we're offering." That night, Elijah sat at his kitchen table, replaying the call in his mind. He thought about his colleagues, many of whom endured Hartman's behavior in silence. He thought about his mother's words and the countless hours he had spent proving his worth. And he thought about the kind of leader he wanted to be, the kind who didn't just rise above adversity, but helped others do the same. Elijah made his decision the next morning. He called the representative and accepted the role. "I'm ready," he said. The day of the acquisition announcement arrived with an electric buzz in the office. Employees speculated in hushed tones, and Hartman strutted through the halls, exuding false confidence. Elijah, meanwhile, prepared quietly, knowing the moment would speak for itself. At 10 a.m., the staff gathered in the conference room. Hartman took his place at the front, glancing dismissively at Elijah, who sat near the back. The door opened, and a group of executives entered, their tailored suits commanding attention. At the center of the group was Elijah. Gasps rippled through the room. Hartman stiffened, his smirk faltering as realization dawned. Elijah, now a senior leader in the acquiring company, stepped forward. "Good morning," Elijah began, his voice steady. "I've spent years working with many of you, and I've seen your dedication. But I've also seen areas where we've fallen short. That changes today." He outlined a restructuring plan focused on respect and inclusivity. "Moving forward," he said, "this will be a place where dignity isn't a privilege, it's a standard." He turned to Hartman, whose face was pale. "Accountability starts at the top," Elijah continued. "Mr. Hartman, your behavior has undermined the values we aim to uphold. You have the opportunity to make amends. The choice is yours." Hartman stammered an apology, his voice barely audible. Elijah nodded. "Acknowledging the problem is a start," he said, "but actions will determine your future here." Under Elijah's leadership, the company transformed. Training programs addressed biases, open forums encouraged dialogue, and policies ensured fairness. Employees felt valued, and the once toxic environment flourished. One afternoon, a young employee approached Elijah. 1 year after Elijah's death, during her annual visit to the neighboring community, regardless of the season, better weather than others crossed Ruthie's path. In 2002, her body was found in a garden outside Posey, whose best friend her age had lost love to. Once he died, Elijah smiled. "That's what we're here for," he replied. As Elijah walked through the office, he reflected on his journey from breakroom humiliation to leadership. He wasn't just leading a company. He was shaping a legacy built on resilience, respect, and the quiet strength his mother had taught him. And as he moved forward, he knew the best was yet to come. Have you ever faced humiliation or unfair treatment in the workplace? Share your story in the comments and let your voice inspire others to stand strong. We'd love to hear about your experiences and perspectives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and justice. Power, wealth, or a high rank may give you a sense of superiority for a moment, but remember, the day always comes when you're held accountable for your actions. Racism, belittling communities, or disrespecting others based on religion may seem unnoticed now, but justice has a way of finding its mark. Respect is not just about others. It defines who you truly are. Think about it. What will your legacy be? Comments below where you're watching from, and if you like and love our story, kindly subscribe our channel. Life, inspirational, and motivational tales that explore themes of love, unity, and patriotism. Stay with us always for interesting stories.